I wanted to just kind of go over a few things from our observation of your class. It was awesome. I want to start off with saying that this is a time for us to work together for growth, for coaching, for both of us. So as you know, I always like to begin any type of session like this by going back to our mission statement. So I'll go ahead and read that just so we both are under the same focus. So the mission of the Oklahoma Virtual Charter Academy is to promote student achievement by providing a rigorous and relevant individualized learning environment. So every time we approach a class, every time we're working with students, that's our mission. That is our everyday when we come into work, that is what we're going to do. So while we are going through this and while you're reflecting upon your lesson, I want you to keep that in your mind. Am I checking all these things off? What can I do to make sure every lesson is checking off these things that we find in our mission statement? So I'm going to start with our strengths because this was a very strong lesson. Right off the bat, it is clear that you have invested the time to build those relationships with your students, which we know the importance of that. We know our kids are not going to work for us and accomplish those amazing goals we've set for them if we don't put that investment first. We don't build those relationships. So I loved that you were able to kind of have that lighthearted joking with some of your students. It just really shows the comfort level that they have with you and the type of learning environment that you have created. Like I said, that's a big time investment. It pays off. And I think that that is definitely something that you are seeing and you will see. Um, the opening activity, super creative. Um, Super creative. Whenever you were doing it, I was trying to figure it out with you. And I again, it's an investment. You know, kids start off and they think, "Oh, what's he gonna do next time? You know, how can I figure it out?" Um, One of the things that I think this is an area of growth with that activity, it was really creative. I thought it was a great way to kind of segue into your lesson. It probably served as a review from prior lessons. Um, but an area of growth, there wasn't as much thinking time. So I don't know if that was due to, planning, trying to get other things in. That's one thing I would like for you to think about. How can I reserve a little bit more time to let the kids try to come to the conclusion of that activity, as opposed to really guiding them through it? Real world connections, that's what we want kids to see. We're having you come to class and do these problems because you're going to use it in the real world. Um, and I appreciate that you were doing that because it shows different learners different ways that they can learn, because we see that we can apply things differently and we see, oh, well, they thought of it that way. So love those real world connections, and I want to encourage you to keep putting those in your lessons. um, your real world connection that I wanted to point out was how the doctor measures you. Well, most every kid has gone to the doctor and had their measurement taken from their head to their feet to know how tall they are. And so they were able to take that connection that you gave them and go, oh, the height of the cone. So it's going to be from the point to the bottom. So just a great way, especially for those visual learners. I thought that was just a really great connection. That goes into my other strength of those, those visual connections. And also with those visual connections, you really discussed, by putting out what the variables, kind of like a roadmap, like, you know, height equals 9, so that they could see step by step. One of my favorite strengths that you showed in this lesson was the self-reflection that students had to go through. They took ownership of their learning in that lesson. They were able to stand on their 2 feet. You gave them the option, hey, you decide which room you'd like to go in based on how you're feeling. So they had to take a step back and say, okay, I'm very comfortable. I can do this on my own. They're taking ownership. And we know that's a big, um, it's a big movement with their education when they say, hey, I can do this, or hey, I need a little bit more help. Um, awesome. Very well-rounded lesson. So as far as areas of growth and just some questions I want to present to you, let you think on them, you can get back to me, or if you think you have some answers right now, that would be amazing. So just some areas, and again, going back to that mission statement of it's individualized, it's rigorous, and the student achievement. So when I'm thinking about all of those things, I had some questions. How can you recruit more participation? There was a lot of responsibility put on you in that lesson to present material, to get the conversation moving. What are some prompts that you can implement to encourage participation? Would a waterfall activity work? Would a chat box bomb work? What are some things that you could do to get your kids talking more? Whether it's in the chat box, whether it's over the mic, how can you take a little bit of that load off of you and put it more on the kids? And like I said, you're giving them that ownership, but what are some other things you can do to get that participation rolling so that kids can present how they think, so that kids can really help one another in that learning process? And another area, how can you create a more student-centered learning environment? So like I said, you were doing a lot of the heavy lifting. You did a fabulous job of doing that heavy lifting. But what are some steps that we can take to where your kids are really stepping up to the plate and they are really taking that initiative? They are making those connections. So like with that opening activity, what would happen if you hadn't led them to that answer? Do you think they would have reached it? Could you have put them in partners? What are some things that you could do to create a more student-centered? Take the responsibility off of yourself and put it more so on the students. Again, fabulous lesson. Thank you so much for your time. I really thoroughly enjoyed it.